Hey, beer appreciators! Swaddy Krab. Welcome to Beer Times Story, the platform where beer and brewing knowledge is shared. All right, we are back. And, for today's session, we're going to tackle contents in the world of beer and brewing from another interesting aspect. We will have a good burp about the converging path of brewing and sustainability topic. I'm pretty sure that, the word brewing is not new to all of us for most of the case. And, nowadays we live in a world where the word sustainability is kind of can be seen everywhere in our daily life, no matter whether you are into it or actually understand it or embrace it or not. And it may be kind of odd to think about joining of these two words together. Now, if you really examine brewing activity itself, it is kind of undeniable that not only, if not all, of the input of beer brewing heavily relies on Mother Nature, barley crops, hops, water, right? But, also apart from the main output, which is the delicious beer that we all care about, hopefully, the other stuff, the byproduct, so called waste, and perhaps, some of the things that we throw away aside from the beer at the end would be neglected in most of the case and probably end up returning to the nature in whoever know conditions, right? And it's just a matter of time before those kind of impact that we created will show up in the environment and review itself in maybe detrimental ways if we do not actually do something about it. However, the union of brewing and sustainability does exist. And speaking of its existence, our guest speaker is not only a firm believer of this concept, but he also a devoter doer as well, setting an example in this area for the industries to the best abilities that he could possibly do, as well from the contribution from his team too. Okay, enough with this pep talk, and let me introduce our guest speaker to all of us. It was around 1991 that the gateway to brewing world swung open to a freshman in a business and logistic major from the Penn State University in Pennsylvania, USA, when he flipped open the Complete Joy of Brewing, A Complete Joy of Home Brewing book written by Charlie Papazian. It didn't take long that he homebrewed his first batch and he was hooked. After that, things started to become more clear to him about what he wanted to do with his life. The thesis he published for his senior year was about the evolution of brewing history in the US post prohibition. And that is quite clear, he was dead set down his path of brewing world. And not long after his graduation in 1994, he packed everything he had in the used car he bought with the money he saved up from working in a local homebrew store and drove up to Vermont to ask for a job from the great Greg Noonan, um, which is one of the pioneer in craft beer brewing and great brewers, talented brewer at that time in the state. Then a year passed by under Greg Noonan's wing. He became a head brewer there and began, sharpening his brewing skills in all possible aspects he could possibly do, with the goal of one day starting his own brewery, which eventually became true in 2003. He and his wife opened a small brew pub in Waterbury, Vermont, and a few months later, the beer he brewed called Heady Topper was poured at that pub for the first time. And the beer is considered to spark the rise of New England style IPA, and the rest is history. Yes, the brewery name is The Alchemist, and so please welcome our guest speaker, John Kimmick.
Hey,
John,
wow, quite a lead up. Thank you so much. That's that's a recap.
drag introduction, right?
Yeah, a recap of my journey. So that was interesting. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate your appearance and thank you for joining the session. It's such a pleasure.
Well, thanks. I appreciate the invitation and happy to sit and talk to you about a very important topic. So,
All right,
all
cool.
right.
So How have you been? Been busy at the brewery?
Oh gosh, Jen and I are always busy. We always have things going on here, but that's nothing different. We've been doing that for many many years, so it's kind of par for the course for us.
All right, all right. Yeah, and I also would like to raise the glass to the 20th anniversary of the Haiti Topper beer. Such a, I mean, rad beer, cool beer, and long journey for you guys too.
Well, thank you. It kind of blows our minds when we think about the fact that it's been 20 years already. But
Yeah,
hey, we loved what we do, and it's an amazing ride. So
that's cool. That's cool. And I bet that there's gonna be more of the awesome beers coming out from your brewery in this, future. Who knows, right?
that's what we do. We're never going to stop doing what we do. So you can always expect that.
All right, cool. And John, so before we tackle today's topic, I would like to ask you about the Alchemist beer. To be more specific, is about the rat name that you guys have. Like Haiti Toppers or Focal Bangers. The word Haiti and Focal Banger kind of remind me of something. So the question is how how true is it that part of some of the beer name and the naming process from your end get inspired by driven creativity from the weed world?
um, well, yeah, now that our son's 20, we've kind of opened up about this stuff, but it's really never really been a big secret if you know Jen and I. Um, we are both huge devotees of cannabis, and it's kind of an integral part of our lives. And I could talk for this whole hour just about that, but to stay on topic,
Hmm.
we work really hard, we play really hard, and we draw a lot of inspiration from cannabis and the gift that it can give you and the places that it can take you so that you can free your mind up enough to let the ideas flow and to pull these ideas from wherever. I mean, it's so hard to quantify where things like that come from, but it's those moments of reflection and introspection and letting go a little bit that some of the best ideas come up. So yeah, I mean, the name Hetty Topper, that's a name that Jen and I came up with sitting on our front porch watching the sunset in the evening after a long day of work and just brainstorming. And so it's kind of a mishmash of two different terms.
Hmm.
You know, Hetty has a lot of different meanings, but back in the day, the nickname for really great cannabis was Hetties, and the topper, that's the top cola that grows on a cannabis plant. So
Okay.
when we put those words together, I mean, it just clicked. As soon as Jen said Hetty Topper together, we just kind of looked at each other. We're like, that's a great name.
Ding, right.
Yeah. And
Cool.
Focal Banger is another. I mean, Focal Banger is another one. That is a variety of weed that was being grown by a friend in central Pennsylvania back in the early 90s,
Oh, okay.
when it was a very different scene in the world of cannabis. It was, certainly very far from being legal. And so it was the wild, wild west kind of. And so this strain that this friend grew is actually a funny story because I always thought this weed was called Focal Banger,
Hmm.
and so that always just stuck with me. I thought that was really funny because if you were at a party and Focal Banger was around, you could kind of look around the room and you could tell who had been touched by the Focal Banger because they were either grinning ear to ear and laughing and having a great time, or they were sitting on the couch with a look of fear in their eyes, just kind of withdrawn and a little bit spun out. So all those years later, when we were at the pub, uh, you know, we decided on naming a beer after
Hmm.
that. So many years later, this is just about a year ago. Um, a very close friend of mine, Chaz, who was also close friends with this gentleman.
Okay.
I'm telling him this story, and he's laughing. He's like, it's not Focal Banger. He said his last name was Fogel.
Oh, okay.
Always been Fogelbanger. And I was like, it's not Fogelbanger. It's like, well, oh well, it's Fogelbanger now. It makes a lot more
It's
sense.
okay now, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, we come up with a lot of crazy beer names, and it's not an easy thing to do anymore because,
Yeah.
you know, pretty much everything's taken. There's over 10,000 breweries, and everybody's got dozens of beers, and they're all coming up with different names. So it's pretty hard to come up with something original nowadays, but those are some good ones.
Right. I totally agree with that. And some of them, like the Skadoosh or El Jefe, is also like a cool name too, but it has some other stories that we can maybe talk later. Not
Yeah. I mean, a lot of them have roots in different personal connections to Jen and I, and there's stories behind most beers.
All right, cool. Okay, that's awesome. All right, so let's see, open the gate and talk about the brewing and sustainability, like what we intended to. Okay, so John, let's begin with this first question. So, how sustainability has become part of the Alchemist DNA? How did it all start?
It's been a part of the Alchemist since the day we conceived of our business. Jen and I are both very much environmentalists. We're driven by things like that. That is a core of what we wanted to do. We've been working together for many years. We've worked for many different businesses and different companies and different bosses. And so we're very aware of the waste stream that results from our industry. And it's something that's very important to us. And it's something that if you are a conscious human being that, gives a shit in the least about our earth and the fact that we're destroying it, then these are the kind of things that should be important to you. And so from day one, we've built those ethics into our business plan. And now, 20 years later, we find ourselves in the position of being leaders in that industry, which is what our goal was from the start. We recognize the fact that these are things that should be built into a business plan from the start. These are things that as business people we prioritized because we like to think that we can, look into the future a little bit and see where things are headed. And by all means, the environment is in crisis mode right now, and people need to be doing what they should be doing. So here we are in the position where we can now teach people what to do and hopefully inspire people to run their businesses in a similar way or set up their businesses in a similar way.
All right, got it. So it's kind of like it has been planted early on in kind of your life too. I mean, before and then you just reflect it with your business, which is the Alchemist.
Absolutely. And sometimes people will ask us, oh, well, what do you do? How do you do it? Like it can be quantified and laid out, and this is just what you do. And so I think it can be misconceived sometimes by someone just starting out.
Right.
It doesn't happen on day one. I mean, this is 20 plus years of focus and effort, and it evolves and it takes time. You can't just do everything right out of the gate. You need to have a plan, and you need to have a target, and you do things when you can. You do things when you're able to do them, when you can afford to do them, which is a big part of it. It's not easy, and a lot of these things are very expensive to do. And we get asked questions about that, and we hear large established corporations, and they'll cry that, oh, we can't afford to do this, we can't afford to do that. It's like, well, that's because you didn't plan for it from the start. So yeah, it's hard to do after the fact, but if you build your business around it, it's a much different situation. You can absorb these expenses as you go rather than getting hit with them after you're already established.
Right. Got you. Got you. I think I believe that I was first introduced to this side of The Alchemist, probably about like 2018, like what, 6 years ago, when the craft beer channel guy visited your brewery and interviewed you there, and then you show them around with the built-in wastewater pre-treatment plants that you have at the stove, and you mentioned about the solar panel that you're going to build at your car parking lots, and that's kind of eye-opening moment for me to see that, hey, beside from focusing on producing the killer beers, you also have this side that you actually care of what you're gonna create, like what the kind of impact you're gonna put it out there to the world too. So it's kind of impressive.
Well, thank you for that. These are things that it's just so essential to Jen and I. And, to be honest, after 30 years of being in the business, the beer side of things gets a little boring. We'll never lose our passion for it. I'm more passionate about it now than ever, I would say, and more focused on the quality now than ever.
Mm-hmm.
So, but what really gets us excited and engaged is all of these other aspects to our business. And those are the things that are really rewarding. It's wonderful, and beer has enabled everything that we do. But there are so many more important things. So,
Great.
It's great. And we love talking about it, and we love teaching people about it.
Cool. That's cool. All right. So next, I think we will explore, your journey down this converging path. So in 2003, right, you and Jen opened the Alchemist Pub and Brewery in Waterbury. And then probably like 8 years later, your first production brewery was up and running. And fast forward to 2016, the state-of-the-art brewery that you currently sit in was open. So as a brewer, I think that, we always kind of have this never-ending ideas and vision of how we're going to try to improve things, the brewing process, the equipment, the layout to push things or to move things to the next level. John, I'm curious, about the sustainability side, and I kind of want to hear about, how your idea of sustainability program implementation at the Alchemist kind of evolve or improve over time with the 3 facilities that you've built so far. I mean, we can just leave the detailed information of what you currently have for the last section. Yeah.
Sure. It's well, like I said, it's that slow grind of perpetual forward motion, and improvement. So, those years ago at the pub, that was the beginning of it. That's where the environmental things started. That's where, the way we treat our employees, so many of those things that in sustainability, people always talk environmental sustainability, but human sustainability is very much a part of the equation. And we could talk about that later as well. But, in those days at the pub, it was the idea of a lot of different things, professionalizing positions and paying people livable wages with benefits, so that they don't get cut without making any money on a slow night. They actually get paid. And if they get sick, they don't lose that day of pay. They get paid for their sick days. But that's where a lot of the environmental things started for us as well, with composting our waste. It all started with composting our food waste at the pub. During the summer months, we would give our food scraps to a local farmer, and he'd feed them to his pigs. And then in the winter, we would send it off to a compost company. And, these things are so important. What tipped it over is when we brought this gentleman in, and he was starting to talk to us about some of the things that they do at their farm, and it was about a totally different topic. But in there, he mentioned the fact that over 50% of the contents of every landfill in the United States is food waste.
Like 50%, 50%, like half of all.
Over 50% of the things that are thrown out in this country is food. This is a major issue. There are very few, probably, municipalities or cities that aren't overstressed with their waste stream, that are dealing with landfills, placement of landfills, maintenance of landfills, the gases that escape from landfills, all of these contributors to global warming. If we were on top of things and we were actually pulling all of that food waste out of the waste stream and composting and turning it into soil, I mean, imagine what we would do to the agricultural industry in this country, what we would do for the waste stream in this country, just everything else. So of course, when you start thinking of it on a grand scale like that, it's daunting and it gets a little depressing, you know? So again, we focus on our little world and our little piece of the puzzle, and we try to set a good example. So over the years of working with that company, when we opened a production brewery, it was a different type of waste stream. So now we're not talking about solid food waste. Now we had liquid brewery waste. And in those early times, they were collecting that and they were trying to incorporate it into their windrows, their composting, but the liquid, it was overwhelming things, and so they couldn't do it. So we morphed into a new idea of taking our waste to a digester, like a anaerobic digester here in the States. So then that compost company started, they continued to do their thing, which is the composting of food waste, which is now mandated here in the state of Vermont. You're required by law to compost food waste. It's illegal to throw food out in the garbage. So a new aspect came into their business, which was the transportation of liquid waste. So the money that they made working with us over the years enabled them to then invest in a pumper truck, the type that pumps sewage. But it was brand new. So it had never pumped anything pathogenic, like human waste, stuff like that. So it is dedicated to brewery waste. So for a number of years, they would pump our side stream waste and they take it to digesters. They've since sold that company to another local company. So it's still the same process. 5 days a week, they come, they pump out our the cubes and drums where we put our high strength liquid waste. They come 5 days a week and they transport that to offsite anaerobic digesters. The waste is processed, the energy is extracted, it's converted back into electricity and put back into the electric grid. And the organic waste that comes out of those facilities are reapplied for agricultural needs. And so we have created this, a loop to deal with our waste stream that is beneficial and does not stress the system.
Right. So that was started when you had your first production, right, brewery, this kind of wastewater treatment.
Well, that's when we started transporting waste. We didn't start treating our waste stream until we built this facility here in Stowe.
Gotcha.
So the years that we were running the production facility in Waterbury and learning all of this, it's the school of hard knocks. That's how there's no books, there's no pamphlets, there's nobody to help you learn this. You learn it through doing it. Now there are. Now you come places like The Alchemist and you get a hand up in learning what you need to do. So when we started conceiving of this facility, that was kind of the first thing on the list. That was a must-have. Jen and I decided and dedicated the resources to designing and building our own on-site wastewater treatment facility for our brewery waste, and that we built in 2016.
Yeah, yeah, um, yeah. Because in general, when we talk about the care that the brewing or the brewery put themselves to the environment or the surrounding areas, you're probably gonna hear stories. Maybe okay, composting is one of them. Maybe they're gonna send the spent grain to the field, to feed the livestock, cow, pigs, which is kind of cool. But to actually think about put it like as one of your vision and actually do something about it and continuously doing it for, I don't know, more than 10 years is just leading the chart and kind of astounding at the same time. Like what you mentioned when you start to build the store, not designing of your store place. um, I understand that you're not only the dedicated wastewater pretreatment room or system that you have. The wastewater pipeline there is double wall, right? With the leak detecting system too.
Well, yeah, well, that's our floor drains. So our building, a couple of different things. For one thing, this property that we bought and built our business on at one time was agricultural land. So
Okay.
the moment we built on it, it was forever not going to be used for agriculture. So that was something that we took very seriously and was part of the part of the equation on putting such an environmentally sound operation on the property. It is showing respect to the land that we are forever changing. And it's it's a it's that attitude that is sometimes lacking in a lot of
Mhm.
businesses. So the business itself, the building itself, and the property is within the perimeter of the town well. The town well water source is only about 2,000 feet away from our property. So we are held to a much higher standard because if something were to leak into the ground, not that we produce anything that would be harmful, but a lot of businesses do. So the regulation is there to keep things from leaking into the water table. So our floor drains are stainless steel welded seamless floor drains, double walled with an air gap in there. And that is what you're speaking of. So if liquid gets into that gap underneath our building, the alarms go off and we know that there is something wrong with our drains. So it's a just a backup safety kind of thing to be sure that not a drop of anything is going into the water table.
Right, right. That's awesome. And all this kind of thing has to be predetermined and well thought out before you actually start to build you know, I don't know how much money you put there, but it has to be well thought out before that. And that's kind of reflects of how you take this sustainability thing seriously to your brewery too.
Well, we do smoke a lot of weed, and we do think about our business pretty much constantly. So at times it gets to be a bit much, which is why we like to play hard as well, because we really need to blow off some steam every once in a while. But
Mhm.
that's what we do. So
Right. And it's like what you mentioned, it's like probably you cannot have everything since day one, right? You gradually start, do everything that you can, and once you be able to afford doing something that's bigger or greater, you just put that in the slot and just put it into action. That's what I kind of observed from what you mentioned.
well, it is that's true, and one of the one of the things that makes that possible is the fact that Jen and I were very patient over the years. Um, this didn't happen overnight. We had very much smaller goals when we started, and things lead you where they lead you. It's that long view is what can help you accomplish these things. And the fact that it's just Jen and I, we were patient in the beginning, that we didn't take investors. A lot of people are impatient. They want like what we have now. They want that on day one. So, if they take on investors and then years later they realize that was not a good decision, because now they're dealing with other people's opinions. So for the two of us, that patience has resulted in the power to make these decisions, just the two of us. We don't have to worry about the profits that are being paid out to investors. If it's expensive, we know it's expensive, it's our money. It's not money that somebody else is expecting as though they deserve a slice of what we've created. So we have that ability to put our resources where we want to put it, not necessarily where it's just going to make more money, but where it's being put to, what you should be doing. Doing the right thing is not cheap.
Right. Yeah, but it's worth doing it.
It's worth doing. If that's what matters to you, if you're not an asshole, yeah, it's worth it.
Right. Okay. Let's move to the main dish. We kind of know a bit of the stories of how you started at the brew pub. You start composing food, and then at your first production place, you start working on some of the treatment of the wastewater, and then comes the stove places. In the current day, in the Alchemist website, you have a dedicated section for sustainability part, and in there, it contains tons of great information. And there are three key aspects of sustainability that I think you guys value, which are waste, water, and energy. So, John, can you please walk us through the current practice of how the alchemists tackle these three things? Let's start with waste first, because I think it's the kind of thing that people can do without much of the investment that they have to put on.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's I don't know if it's the easy side of things, but it's more achievable because there's a lot of infrastructure already existing for stuff like that. So if I assume you're talking about, like solid waste and recycling and all of those things. And, when I give tours here, that's mostly what I talk about. I don't talk about the beer side of things so much. I talk about these things that we're talking about right now. And we do a pretty good job of it. There's no way we're ever going to get down to zero waste, but we really try to chip away at just about everything, from the grain bags that we collect and consolidate until we have a full 53-foot trailer, and then have them recycled and turned into different things, and our clear stretchable plastic that gets turned into artificial Trex decking, and our black rubber gloves that our brewery staff and our packaging staff wears, and our ability to have those collected and recycled and turned back into more gloves. And it really goes on and on, from every bit of waste stream that is produced in this building, to the point where we have a 6-foot dumpster that once a week is maybe half full. So for an operation this size, we do an exceptional job of dealing with that to the best that we can. There are certain limitations that you just can't really overcome because the recycling stream just doesn't exist. Even like those bags, that didn't exist until we started it. I mean, we've been doing that for years, and now we've got maybe a dozen other breweries in the state of Vermont that are on this program as well.
Awesome.
So it's tough and it's not perfect, but we're always trying to improve it.
Right. Cool. And once a week, 6-foot dumper half full. That's impressive.
Yeah, we do a pretty good job, and there's certain things that we just don't have a pathway for recycling them, and that's the reality. There's a certain amount of things that eventually just go to a landfill.
Right. maybe it's off the topic a little bit here, but the message that you put on the can itself, like "Don't be a d bag," does that really helps?
Does it help?
Yeah.
I hope so. It's funny. My mom, that was the one thing that she always she didn't like that. She saw that. She thought it was a little bit crass, um, but that's okay because it was intentional. It was meant to be a little bit crass. When we first started putting that on our cans, uh, you just didn't see anything ever anywhere. At best, you saw "Please recycle"
Yeah.
written on the bottom of a packaging somewhere, and that doesn't have any impact. That doesn't do a thing. People aren't even reading that. And
Right.
so we knew we had to put a message on there that got it through, that is kind of like a little slap in the head. Like if
Hmm.
I was standing in front of you and you finished that beer and you're going to throw it in the trash, and I gave you a little smack in the head and said, "Hey,
Hmm.
recycle that," so how do you do that? And that's what we came up with, so that it is just that little bit different, that you do look at the can, then you see that and it sticks with you and you're like, oh, well, I don't want to be a d-bag, I'm going to recycle. So if it did upset my mom, so be it, because the end product is just people being a bit more aware. Take your blinders
Yeah.
off and pay attention to something other than yourself for 2 seconds.
Got it. And by hearing this thing actually from you now, probably next time I look in the can, your voice gonna just ring in my ears like, okay, recycle.
Yeah, sure. Rinse it out and put it in recycling. It's pretty
Right.
easy.
Right. Okay. Cool. Before we move to the water part, I have one, summary of what you do with the net waste zero concept, and we can just walk through it just a little bit together.
Sure.
Because you also mentioned that you do a lot of sorry, not the single stream and multi-stream recycling too, right? Oh,
We do. Well, yeah, the single stream, that's the thing here in Vermont. So it's a mixed recycling that then gets pulled apart at the recycling place. Uh,
right.
it's kind of become a problem. 20 years ago, 25 years ago, humans were trained to separate their recycling. You had glass, you had metal, and you had paper, and
Yeah.
that's the way it was. And then all of a sudden, overnight, they're like, no, just throw it all in there together. We'll do it. So overnight, all that progress that had been made to try to train humans to do the right thing, you
Mhm.
gave them the lazy way of doing things. What nobody realized was that the reason things got easier was because they stopped doing it here in this country and they just started shipping our garbage to Asia, and letting them deal with it. And
Okay.
until Asia said, fuck this, we're not taking your trash anymore.
Yeah.
And now we're dealing with that, and so they're actually kind of going backwards and trying to get things a bit more sorted and a bit more reasonable, so that it's not such a disgusting mess, the recycling bins. So it's a convoluted effort. It can be very frustrating at times, but that constant forward progress is what we all hope for. And as you see things like the trash island out in the middle of the South Pacific that
Mhm.
is larger than the state of Texas,
Oh God.
um,
Okay.
that it's sickening and it's mind bending and it gets a little depressing. But if we've learned anything as humans, the fact of the matter is, some people are driven by doing the right thing, and a lot of people are driven by what is the cheapest thing or what's going to make me money. So I can only hope that the combination of the people that are doing it because they want to clean up the earth, I hope that kind of comes together with the people that are like, hey, I could make some money doing this.
Mhm.
And eventually we'll solve that problem. When that trash pile floating out in the ocean if when we have the technology to grab it and extract the energy back out of it and pull that money back, when it becomes profitable, that's when that can be dealt with. So unfortunately, we have to wait for that to catch up before we can deal with problems like that. But it's crazy because all this plastic in the world, it's all made from fossil fuels.
Mm-hmm.
The energy that was used to produce it and the energy that is contained in it. Energy is money.
Yeah.
So eventually, we've got to figure out a way to deal with this. We need Mr. Fusion, like that thing on the back of the car in Back to the Future, where you just dump garbage into it and it converts it, tears it apart, and creates fusion energy from it. So hopefully someday we figure that thing out and we can start whittling away at the heap of garbage that we're turning this planet into.
Yeah, and it seems like you always constantly trying to search for new ways to handle the things that could be recycled to, like the plastic handle for your 4-pack, right? You just change it to the plant-based version. And
yeah, that project did not go as we had hoped it would.
Okay.
We were one of the very first, if not the first, brewery in the world that started applying those on a large scale. So there are breweries out there that use those plant-based handles, but they were hand applying them. So they had they were doing 4-packs individually.
Oh, okay.
So we were working with that company to help them develop a machine that would be the applicator, so that you could have a canning line running at 60 cans a minute and producing 4-packs.
Okay. So that is still underway, right?
Well, we backed back out of that. We're going to wait a couple of years, and hopefully things are going to catch up.
Right.
So,
right.
I don't want to say bad things about that company, because what they're doing is needed and smart and all of those things. But the toppers started to be produced in China. And it kind of made it, why are we now? How is that environmentally sound?
Okay. Yeah.
To have it shipped all the way from China to keep,
Yeah.
So we backed away from it. We went back to those plastic toppers. They are they're 100% post-consumer recycled plastic. And we did move out of using black plastic, because black plastic can only be black plastic. It's the end game. So that's why all of our toppers are silver now, because the silver can be turned into lots of different things.
All right. For the better good. Yeah. Sure. And you mentioned the malt sack bag, right? The repurposed thing is also kind of one of the cool things at the Alchemist. You have the Cherry Top Richies too.
Oh yeah. So those grain bags, we keep those shopping bags. They make amazing shopping bags. They really are the best. But that's a handful of bags. When you're talking about over 10,000 craft breweries in the United States making beer every day, and throwing those bags in the landfill because there is no existing recycling stream for those bags. That's why we had to create the whole process that we do. So, it's much, much bigger than that. And, the repurposing is great, but you could never repurpose all of the bags that are used.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that cheese, that's our friend Rick. He makes that cheese for us. And it's just such a cool thing. And it just pairs well with our general business philosophy, which is how can our business help other business or individuals or the community or anything. So we've always been very supportive of other operations, and whatever boost we can give somebody like his cheese company by using our beer in it, it's a mutually beneficial thing. And it's a very successful product for them. And so it gives us great pride knowing that that's another one of those things where our circle of influence as a business, the way it's that rising tide lifts all ships kind of mantra. And, you create something that lifts and empowers others instead of taking from and using others.
Got it. And I think the last section for this waste part is the CO2 reclamation system that you guys put in place. How do you find it like really effective? And what do you think of it?
We love it. It's an incredible aspect to our business. We still troubleshoot and tinker with the machine. It's a pretty new technology. The Earthly Labs is the company we work with. They build that machine for us, and it's a relatively new technology because 10 years ago or more, it was really only reserved for the really big breweries that were producing vast quantities of beer, fermenting round the clock 7 days a week. So you just had a constant, steady stream of CO2. So when you start dealing with smaller breweries like ours, it's not like that. We brew 3 days a week. There is an arc of production of CO2 that peaks on certain days and then fades away, and there's zero CO2 being produced on a couple days of the week. So that intermittent production of CO2 was something that had to be overcome, and this company has figured that out. So we've been working with them for a number of years. We're still constantly trying to better the machine. We're actually in the middle of that right now with some compressor aspects of the thing, but overall, it's an amazing addition to our business. It has reduced our exposure to the risk of an interruption in the CO2 supply chain, which has happened numerous times over the past few years, where they're overnight, it suddenly is difficult to obtain liquid CO2. And if you're not prepared for this, you can really spell trouble for your business. I mean, there were breweries that had to close down during the last crisis because they couldn't get CO2. So it's multifaceted. We're driven by doing it because it is the environmentally sound thing to do, instead of just spewing greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, to actually collect them and minimize the amount that you use. But it's also good business. It protects your business from risk. It is, in the long run, less expensive. And it is an organically produced source of CO2 instead of buying industrial produced CO2, which can come from any industry out there.
Yeah. And just out of my curiosity here, like, do you find any advantage of it in terms of the beer itself using this reclaimed CO2?
Absolutely. So when we first put this thing, when we first commissioned it and started using it, we were finally ready to start carbonating our first beer with it. So this had all happened, and away it goes. And then I came in that evening. I had been out of town, and so I stopped in at work because I was just so curious.
Yeah.
And I popped the CO2 poppet off, and I smelled the gas and had a panic attack because it wasn't neutral like CO2 is. It had an aroma. Not only did it have an aroma, but it had an aroma of somewhat of an acetone aroma, which is really bad. It's like nail polish remover is acetone. So for a short second there, I was like, oh God, I had this feeling of dread in the pit of my stomach. But then I grabbed a glass and I tasted the beer, and it tasted amazing. It was fine. No trace of that characteristic that was in the gas. So, it calmed me down enough that I could go home and go to bed, and then come back the next day and discuss this with everybody. So we began what we always do if we're faced with something like that. We want to figure out why. So we reached out to our one of our hop suppliers, and we were discussing this with them, and they sent us this cool little thing. It's like a tiny little glass button, basically.
Right. Right.
And what this is it's the thing that they put into a mass spectrometer to analyze the components of the compounds. So we filled a bottle with the gas, put this little pellet in it, and then overnighted it to their lab, and then they analyzed it and they sent it back to us. And what we deduced, what was going on there, is that aroma compound is actually a hop-derived compound that is just in the gas of fermentation.
Wow.
So when this all clicked, Joel and I were out at the Craft Brewers Conference out in Colorado, and Yakima Chief had had a display that they were doing with people. And you approached their booth, and they had like 10 glass vials lined up on the counter, and you would take litmus paper and you'd dip it in each one, and you'd smell each one going down the line. And some were pleasant, some were nice, some were repulsive,
right?
And some were just strange individually. But then you took all 10 of those strips together and you wave them under your nose, and this amazing citrus aroma comes out. And it turns out that what we were smelling was the terpene profile of Citra hops.
Whoa.
So that's when it all kind of clicked, and it was like, aha, so that's what's going on here. So what that actually is one tiny specific terpene of fermentation that we are now collecting and re-injecting back into the beer. So it's almost like a touch of MSG in food. It's like a flavor boost. It props up the other aromas, and so it actually like helps a little bit. So that was an unforeseen benefit from collecting our own CO2. With that said, we have excess CO2. We produce, we probably only use about 70% of what we produce. So we're just about a week or two away from collecting that excess into smaller portable Dewar tanks that will be filled with the liquid CO2 that our friend Justin has a cannabis company. He's a fully integrated license where he is a grower, and so he can grow it and sell it. Medicine Man Botanicals will start taking deliveries of our CO2, and he will be fortifying the air of his grow rooms with our CO2.
Wow. Because
you raise the parts per million levels of the CO2, and the plants get a boost from the growth, and he'll probably end up with 10 to 20% higher yields in his grow rooms from using our CO2. And that is, once again, an unforeseen benefit of doing the right thing. So that CO2, we're not going to sell it to them, we're going to give it to them because we were just dumping it to the air. So why would we sell it to them? So again, helping out.
Yeah.
Do the right thing.
That's cool. Awesome. Okay. So next one is the wastewater part, John. I would say that, just curious, like what do you guys do about it at The Alchemist?
Well, okay, so everything starts with that side streaming that I talked about before. So all of the high strength liquid waste, the excess yeast, the beer and the dry hops that come out of a fermenter, the hops and the unfermented wort that come out of the whirlpool, the last runnings out of the mash, like all of those high strength, high BOD products that have to be organic products, we side stream those. So in that image, you see the blue drum up on the top right, and the cube with that green lid there. So we put those things in there, and then that's what the pumper truck comes and pumps and takes to the anaerobic digesters that are off site. Right. So what goes down those floor drains that we discussed earlier, first it goes from the drain into the two holding tanks out in our front yard. So we've got two 5,000 gallon tanks buried in the ground. The first one is a settling tank for any solids that may go down the drain. And then the second tank is the pumping tank. And that's where we pump the liquid waste into our aerobic digester. So the digester that we have in-house, actually the bacteria in there thrives in the presence of oxygen. So we feed it with oxygen. It breaks down our waste stream. And you can see in that one image there with the 3 beakers.
Right.
The one on the right is the waste stream as it goes into the system. The
Yeah.
bacteria does its work. It goes from the reactor into what's called the DAF, the dissolved air flotation device. And as it goes into there, we inject it with ionically charged polymer that is drawn to the solids. Those solids float to the top as the
bottom
container in the middle.
Yeah.
We skim those solids out of there and we put them into a tank that is pumped by the pumper truck.
All right.
The beaker on the left of the clear liquid, that is what we discharge to the town of Stowe's waste system. So we have 2 breweries. We have our Waterbury brewery, and we produce about 9,000 barrels there, and we produce about 9,000 barrels at our Stowe facility. In Waterbury, we do all the side streaming, but we don't have that digester, or we don't have our wastewater room. So what goes down the drain goes to the town of Waterbury's municipal waste system. Before it goes down, we have what's called a sampler, a grab sampler. It's a machine that takes tiny sips of the waste stream and consolidates them into a sample every day. We then send that sample to a lab. The results are analyzed. We record it. We send it into the state every month with our report to prove that we are keeping true to our direct discharge permit that we have with the state of Vermont. So that permit doesn't allow us to exceed 65 pounds of BOD a day. BOD is biological oxygen demand. It's food for bacteria, food for the bacteria that is at the waste facility that has to deal with the waste.
Right.
Permit doesn't allow us to go over 65 pounds a day. Through side streaming, we end up in that 15 to 25 pounds a day. So we do a pretty good job of it. But Jen and I, when we were conceiving of this operation, we wanted to do better. So we hired an engineering firm and we started doing some testing there in Waterbury of different technologies to deal with this until we settled on what we currently use. So when we got our permit here for Stowe, our limits on our discharge permit were 11.1 pounds a day, which was unexpected. We had asked for the 65, not to get into details, we weren't given the 65. So it was frustrating for a lot of reasons, but the big one is that for the first 10 weeks that we were operating that system and we weren't within the limits of our permit, we were not legally allowed to discharge to the waste system. So we had to pump that second tank every day to the tune of $2,500 a pump. We had to do that 5 days a week for 10 weeks. So it was extremely expensive and extremely upsetting, but whatever. We just kept our heads down and kept doing it. So now we put out from this Stowe brewery consistently less than 0.1 of 1 pound of BOD a day. A single family 3-bedroom home on average puts out 3.5 pounds a day. We put out less than 0.1 of 1 pound out of this brewery. So that liquid that is going into the waste stream is almost drinking water, and actually benefits the town of Stowe's waste system because we are adding dilution to the waste stream that is making its way down to the town system. So, we met a little resistance when we proposed all of this. People were a little bit skeptical, but, now we get awards from the state. We bring we bring businesses, students, we bring people in to learn what we do in there, and we are now industry leaders in it.
Yeah. And like when I saw this Three Beakers photos for the first time, and like the left one that you discharge back to the, I was like, oh my God, this is like looks super nice.
Yeah.
It's been through a lot of process that you guys been doing, and you actually have the dedicated wastewater management person too, right?
Well, Steve Miller is a wizard down there, and we're
Mhm.
we're lucky to have him work with us because it's not an easy job and it's not a glamorous job, but he does an exceptional. Um, it's just incredible what he does down there to keep everything clicking and moving, and it's a complex system, but it's worth it in the end. Sorry if you can hear birds in the background. That's my cuckoo clock back there.
Oh, okay. It's all right. It's all right. Yeah, and I think in one of your interview, you mentioned that your team, your brewing team, especially that for the site streaming part, they took this concept kind of seriously, right? They try to avoid spilling and all those waste down the drain as to the best abilities that they can do, and that is kind of cool to hear that.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, everyone has to buy in. You
Mhm.
know, I mean, you can't work here if you're not on board. So, you know, we employ a lot of like-minded people. It's an amazing crew that we've surrounded ourselves with.
It's awesome. It's awesome. All right. To the last one, the last part, John, the energy. How do you tackle them?
Oh, geez. By embracing what we can. We're early adopters of solar. Our Waterbury Brewery is 100% solar, has been for many years. We have an agreement with an off-site solar farm where we purchase all of our electricity. There is an outbuilding on our Waterbury property that is where we have walk-in cooler, walk-in freezer, can storage, beer storage, stuff like that. So a few years after that was built, we were able to put solar panels on top of that. So all of the energy produced by those panels, we donate to the Waterbury Senior Center
Okay.
to eliminate their electricity bills. Here in Stowe, which you have up on the screen right now, those parking lot based solar panels, those provide just a little over 50% of our power here in Stowe.
Mhm.
We do have plans to put additional panels on the property eventually. You can't really see it in that image, that angle of the building, but on the far side of the building, there's a section that has a lot of equipment,
Okay.
compressors and stuff like that. We have a concept for putting a canopy over that and turning that into an array that would get us up to 100%.
Wow.
We have that amazing, huge roof.
Mhm.
We're hesitant to put panels up there because we don't really want to mess with the membrane of the roof and potentially cause sources of water ingress and leaks and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But there are ways around it. We're always thinking about what we can do. I mean, that's just going to take a couple more years, I think, until technology catches up. The ideal solution for that, from looking at it, would be to cover that entire roof surface with some sort of pliable,
Mhm.
soft solar panel rather than the rigid panel that is bolted down to the roof. So, technology is always improving. It's kind of tricky here in Vermont because of our winters. So,
Okay.
there's some technology out there. There's a Tesla actually makes these shingles for your roof that are solar panels. So it just looks like shingles,
Mhm.
but they're all solar receptors. We were actually going to put those on our house, but we ended up not doing it because of the questionable how well it would do in our harsh winters. Because it's
Okay.
pretty extreme here in Vermont. But yeah, that's again what I talked on earlier. It's a long journey, and you don't do all this stuff overnight. and you just got to be a little patient. We'll get there eventually.
Yeah, I can see that. And you also kind of harness the power of your climate too, right? You do this free cooling system for the cooler, right?
Sure. Those cold winters enable us to use that free air system in our coolers. So, usually about November, the air temperature consistently drops cool enough that our refrigeration compressors shut off for the winter.
Right.
And it's just the energy taken by 2 circulating fans that draw the air into our cooler. So we cool our walk-ins with outside air until about March, when it starts warming up again during the days, and then the compressors come back on. So lots of little pieces that you can chip away to improve your environmental impact.
Yeah, certainly. And all of these things, kind of puzzles, has been put together in place, and you start seeing the overall pictures of how the alchemists and you guys tag it, how care, or what kind of attention or attitude you put it out there. And to be honest, for me, you guys are just leading the chart in this term, and it is kind of why I want to talk to you about this thing as well, as I want to spread the message further, just to make sure that people is kind of aware of this side of the brewing industry as well.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. It's what we do every day. Try to educate people and get them on board.
Yeah, cool. I think we are at the end of this session, John. Just want to ask you, do you have any final thoughts about this topic?
No, I think we've covered quite a bit today.
Yeah. All right, cool. That's awesome. I just want to say that, all right, John, thank you for your time, coming to the platform, sharing all these wonderful stories about how you guys come up with the way you tackle sustainability and being the good human being, care about what's happening out there. And I hope that probably I'll be able to visit your brewery someday in the near future at Stowe. So just have to wait on that.
That would be nice. Someday we hope to get to Thailand, so we'll see.
All right, cool. Okay. In the meantime, just take care and stay in a healthy, good shape.
Hey, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate it a lot. Thank you. All right. Goodbye. All right. Here you have it, the converging path of brewing and sustainability at one of the, I think, most brewery that I put in a held on my highest regard, out there, not only in terms of the beer itself, and not only in terms of the way they run their business, but also the way that they reflect their care to the environment as well. So I know that we didn't talk a lot about beer in this session, but I hope that our listener, you all out there, kind of be able to distill some of the beneficial stuff and put in their daily life. It can be as simple as being more care about the way you work at your office, being more care about how you cook and how you're going to throw food at your house. So yeah, that's all for today. So the Good Burp session will be back in no time. So stay tuned. Until then, cheers and สวัสดีครับ